Welcome. In this video, I would like to address the general skills that are expected of all college students. If you're in high school, or if you've recently been graduated from high school and are progressing to your first semester of college life, you may find the information in this video to be a bit novel and maybe unexpected. If you've been in college for a year or more, I encourage you to also watch this video through to the end, because there's a really good chance that I will address topics that either you haven't yet noted or skills that you haven't yet developed, but that you recognize would be valuable to your work in college. During much of this video, I will support my oral comments with a Microsoft PowerPoint presentation. It's common in college for instructors to use some form of digital video presentation medium. PowerPoint is the most common that I've observed when I've visited my colleagues' classes. It can be overdone, but I hope that in this video you focus on my oral comments and recognize that I'm using the PowerPoint slides as an adjunct to my comments, sometimes to remind me what to say, other times just to reinforce what I'm saying. In preparing this PowerPoint presentation, I thought about the most important skills that a college student needs. And I think the most important skill is self-management. But within self-management, there are specific micro skills that arise. In fact, I have three PowerPoint slides related to just self-management. The first, get sufficient sleep. If you're a person who needs 8 hours of solid sleep a night, get to bed in sufficient time to allow you to have 8 hours of sleep and still prepare yourself for the next day. Some people require more than 8 hours of sleep. I know when I was a residential college student, I needed 9 or 10 hours of sleep because I was so busy during the day that I was really worn out, and I needed that extra time to build up the physical energy to be able to face the next day. Some people will require fewer than 8 hours of sleep. Know your own body, but as a general rule of thumb, you probably need more sleep than you think you do. Arise for class with sufficient time to prepare yourself for the day ahead. Take into account the time that you need to get physically prepared in the morning and the time that is required for you to travel from your residence to the classroom. Now, if you're a on-campus residential student, there's a good chance you'll walk to class. Take into account how busy the sidewalks will be. Literally, what are the traffic backups, even though everyone's on foot? If you're a commuter student, take into account the vehicular traffic patterns so that you know, on average, how long it takes to get to class. And then plan for the longest travel time. I don't know that it's a good idea to just plan on the average travel time. The attire that you wear while in class should demonstrate your commitment to your academic work. One of the dress behaviors that I have observed, particularly among freshmen, is the wearing of pajamas or slippers to class. Dress for school in a manner that demonstrates your commitment to your responsibilities. If it's pajama day on campus, then it's fine to wear pajamas. Other than that, pajamas really have no place outside of the residence. And you might even want to go so far as to dress in a manner that would be appropriate during your post-college employment. So you're literally dressing for your own success. On the second slide of self-management, there's always more to learn. I had originally titled this bullet item as college work will take more than 24 hours a day. And that's not a true statement. There's only 24 hours in each day. But academic work is a little bit of a rabbit hole. The more you look for information, the more information you find. The more you know, the more information you desire to know. So, particularly in regard to research, academic activities can take significantly longer than you have originally planned for. So leave flexibility within your personal schedule so that you've got the freedom to fully complete your academic responsibilities and you don't feel rushed to get an assignment done. Get started immediately whenever an assignment is given to you. Even when the professor says, I'm assigning a 5-page research paper, it's due in 3 weeks. That afternoon, that evening, you should be started with listing potential topics for your research paper, listing your biases, your opinions, your current thoughts about the paper. By the next day, you should be starting your research for the project. Typically, for an undergraduate 5-page research paper, I would expect students to put forth somewhere between 5 and 20 hours of research in the library before they even attempt to write the first sentence in the paper. So some projects at college will take you much longer than a similar project would have taken you in high school, because you will have access to much more data, and you have to sift through that data and filter the wheat from the chaff. Prioritize your assignments and the individual components of each assignment. If you have an assignment due in 2 days and another assignment due in 2 weeks, it makes sense to do the 2-day assignment first. Get that done, out of the way, and then begin the assignment that has some greater slack in its schedule or has more flexibility regarding when you complete the assignment. And do important tasks first. There are tasks that are fun and enjoyable, and there are tasks that are important. Sometimes they're enjoyable, sometimes they're not. Do the important tasks first. Defer the enjoyment until after having completed the most important tasks. In regard to assertiveness, speak up in class. I can't recall ever having met a student who earned an A in any of my classes that didn't also speak frequently in class. Now, I've also had students who speak frequently in class and don't do academically well, but the common characteristic of all students who do well is that they participate in class. They let the teacher know what they themselves know. Or let me say that more clearly. Students who earn high grades let the professor know that they know the relevant required material. They show an understanding of the information contained in the assigned readings, which, by the way, never go to class without having done the readings. And because later I'm going to advise you to always go to class, we can assume that you must always do the assigned readings, no matter how boring they are. But in regard to assertiveness, speak up in class. Share the knowledge that you gained from preparing for the class. Ask for clarification when you don't understand a course requirement. For example, if I were to assign a 5-page paper due in 2 weeks to a class of students, I kind of reasonably expect someone in the room to ask me, what do I mean by page? Do I count the title page? Do I count the reference page? What if a page were 3/4 full? Does that count as a full page? Make sure you understand what the requirements are, because often these little details are not written in the assignment prompt or in the syllabus. So you have to ask these clarifying questions. Still on the topic of self-management, this is my last slide. Take responsibility for your own success. Arrive to the classroom, be seated, have your note-taking material arranged on your desk prior to the start of class so that the professor can begin class at the scheduled time and assume that everyone in the room is ready to attend to the comments being made. I suggest arriving to the classroom a few minutes early so you have time to get ready, and you must stay for the duration of the class. Wait for the professor to release you. Unlike in high school, where there are often bells or chimes that indicate the end of class periods, at university, it's the instructor who releases the students. Sometimes, frequently, I release students a few minutes before the scheduled time because I have taught my students these skills early in the semester. We start our class on time, we move quickly through the material, and then I can wrap up a few minutes early, giving the students and me a bit of a breather between class. But some faculty will hold students late. Stay. Unless you have a life-threatening situation coming up during the next class period, don't leave class until the instructor has released you. Because it's often, when a professor is running late, running long during the class session, there will be very important information presented in the last couple minutes. So you don't want to miss the really important information. When it comes to submitting assignment responses, always be on time. There really are very few exceptions to submitting an assignment late. It's rare for an instructor to not give at least a week to prepare an assignment response. During that week, you should be able to find sufficient time to complete the assignment. If you have a travel scheduled, or if you have a medical appointment scheduled that will prevent you from doing your academic work for a day or two, talk with your professor and see if you can make private arrangements, maybe a 1 or a 2 day extension on the due date. But those exceptions are few and far between. In general, there are very few times that students can reasonably submit assignments late. When it comes to tests and examinations, arrive at the testing center with sufficient time to begin at the beginning of the testing period, and make sure your submission is recorded before the end of the testing period. Before this past semester, I would never have thought that I would have to tell students that. But this past semester, in 3 different classes, I had at least 2 students fail to submit the final exam. Now, rather than requiring my students to come to the classroom and take the examination in person, I allowed them a week in which to complete the examination at their residence and upload it through our learning management system. And yet I still had 6 students who failed to submit the final exam on time, and all of them were pretty angry when they saw that they had earned a grade of 0 because the university prevents me from accepting final examinations late. So, even though, rather than giving the students a 2-hour exam period in person, I gave them a full week. And I think in one of those classes, I gave 2 weeks during which the exam could be submitted. I really didn't know what to say to those students, but it does occur. Obviously, it happened to me. So I'm cautioning you, know when your tests and exams are due, and make sure you complete them on time. And develop the discipline and the grit to stick to it when the going gets tough. Every college student that I have ever met, and I remember when I was a student, so this was true for me also. Every day at some point we feel discouraged and or overwhelmed. It's okay. It's a normal reaction to the high expectations that are put on college students. Stick to your work. If you need to take a break, and then get right back to your work. Don't allow your social life to negatively affect your academic performance. There's a time for friends, and there's a time for academic work. Do your academic work first, and then enjoy the company of your friends. And by the way, the same thing holds true for students who are athletes on an organized sports team. You are a college student first. You're a college student who also is an athlete. So I have heard used the term student athlete many times. You are not student athletes. That means you're an athlete first who's also a student. you are athletic students. And sometimes you have to let your team down to meet your academic responsibilities. I, for one, do not advocate for either encouraging and definitely not facilitating students participating in athletic activities to the detriment of their academic responsibilities. And I would think the majority of my colleagues would agree with me, including those that serve as academic advisors to athletes. Stay on track. Know when your responsibilities come due and create a schedule for yourself that allows you to meet all of your responsibilities. Now, I've observed some students who have told me that they keep a large physical calendar in their dormitory room and use colored markers and different colored Post-it notes to track when their responsibilities are due, when an assignment is due, when a test comes up, when is their club meeting. That's fine. If that works for you, use it. But I encourage you to use a digital information management system, such as a digital calendar that can synchronize among your computer, your tablet, and your phone, and be accessible through a web browser interface from someone else's computer. That way you have access to your schedule of your to-do list, your reminder list, your calendar of activities. You'd have access to this information from multiple sources. The problem with the large calendar that hangs on the dormitory wall is it's only useful when you're in your dormitory room. So while you may want to use that because, one, it looks pretty, two, it's easy to use, and three, you're familiar with that format, fine. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm saying also transfer that data to a digital system. And I think you will find that once you're using the digital system, you have much greater control over your scheduling information, and you may forego using the physical medium of the calendar that hangs on the wall. Now, I work on Mac computers, so I use a combination of the Apple Calendar program, the Apple Reminders program. Let's see, I'm just looking at some of the icons on my screen. Those are the two big ones I use for managing my schedule, the Apple Calendar and the Apple Reminders. And the data that I enter into my calendar and my reminders apps synchronize to my phone, my iPad, and are also available through the iCloud webpage. So I can get to them even from I can get to that information even using someone else's computer. The days of carrying an appointment minder around, and you may not even have seen one of these during your lifetime. More than 20 years ago, approaching 30 years ago, until then, I regularly carried a little leather booklet that was a daily calendar, and in it I could write all my appointments and my things to do. I saw a student using something similar to that for the first time in more than a decade, about a year ago. And I challenged the student. I said, what would happen if you lost that physical book. And the student says, oh my God, my life would fall apart. Exactly. Don't rely on physical media if for your most vital information. And that's why I'm so passionate about using a digital calendaring and reminder system. In college classes, you must be prepared to accept criticism. The criticism, if presented appropriately, is not about you. It's about the work that you've produced. But still, it can sometimes feel like the person who is giving us advice to change the work we've produced, it can feel a bit personal. It's not. I do not give students personal advice. Rather, I give them advice about how they can improve the quality of their academic work. You can expect to get feedback on every assignment that you submit, especially if it's a written assignment. On a test or an exam, you may get just a grade with identification of which items you selected an incorrect answer. But on a written paper, as all my students know, I often write about as much in feedback as they wrote in the body of the paper. I have had students that did such excellent work that all I could do was compliment their work. But those students are few and far between. I can almost always find something that I would recommend a student do differently that would improve the quality of their work. And I tell them that and show them how to improve the quality of their work. In class, as a group of students, you may occasionally receive feedback from your professor. Sometimes a professor might say to the entire class, compared to prior semesters, your performance is better than or less than the prior semester's students' work. A professor might address the entire class and say, I'm noticing a common problem in your work. Let's spend some time talking about that. And then the professor can offer instruction on how to repair the mistakes that are common among all students in the class. But the most important feedback that you will get is the personal feedback when from the instructor who advises you to do something differently in a particular assignment. So be prepared to get some very pointed feedback, very direct. It's not about you, it's about your work. So try to remember that. And it makes it a little bit easier to accept the critical comments that the instructor will offer. One of the general skills required of all college students is the ability to demonstrate critical thinking, the ability to look logically at data and help convert that data into information without allowing personal preferences, biases, opinions to color the information that is produced from the received data. But this also requires being tolerant of ambiguity. Often when conducting research, a student will come upon multiple experts who have written about a topic, and each expert has reached conclusions that are contrary to another expert. Be prepared for that. When it comes to most things in the world, these things aren't black and white. There's not clear right and wrong when it comes to analysis of information. There's not a clear truthfulness, falseness in the philosophical sense. There are truths and lies, but when I use the word truth and falsity, it's sometimes based on the data that one has considered. One will reach a particular conclusion that is philosophically truthful based on the data. Someone who reviews different data may reach a different conclusion that contradicts the other conclusion, and this second conclusion is still truthful because it's based on different data. So be prepared. College will require you to be tolerant of ambiguity. Observe your own biases and opinions. It's okay to have them, but don't allow them to color the judgment that you make of information that you create from data that you've acquired. In other words, be dispassionate about the arguments that you make in your academic papers. You will frequently be asked to write a paper that takes a position that's contrary to your preference. This definitely will occur in any class that requires a debate, but it occurs in most classes, not just philosophy classes. You may be passionate about ecology, yet in a business class be asked to write a paper in favor of greater industrialization that takes advantage of ecological resources. It happens. Be dispassionate. Allow your arguments to be based on the data you've acquired from expert sources, and the work that you write in your college level, whether oral presentations or written work, doesn't have to reflect what you prefer. It reflects what you have observed from the data that have been presented by experts. And always seek to synthesize knowledge. In high school, you were likely asked to report on what an expert said, or what a journalist said, or any data producer. In college, we're asking you to synthesize knowledge by taking data from multiple experts, putting that data together, and creating information that was not fully addressed by any one individual of the data sources. So this idea of synthesizing knowledge doesn't mean making things up, making up arguments out of whole cloth. In college, we'll be asking you to make arguments that reflect the findings of expert sources. And frequently, those sources are not in perfect agreement with one another in the arguments that they each have presented. One of the broad skills that businesses frequently ask universities to teach to students is communication. By far, the most common complaint I have heard from employers is that students coming out of university cannot write at a level that's appropriate within that organization. But more than just writing, I think we also need to be honest with ourselves and say, we may not read well enough either. So I'm going to encourage you now to improve your reading comprehension and to expand the vocabulary that you're able to use effectively, and to recognize that English is not a single language. There are varieties of English, and not just dialects, but English is used in different ways around the world. For example, in a previous video, I made a comment regarding the use of between and among. In America, the word between can be used between this and that. So between you and me, there is agreement. Or between 5 and 10, there exists 6, 7, 8, 9, as well as fractions and decimals. However, and in America, we use the word among when showing some type of shared element among 3 or more entities, such as among us to an American indicates at least 3 people are being addressed. However, in Britain and sometimes in South Africa and in India, the word between can be used both to indicate what exists between 2 entities or between multiple entities. Whereas in America, we would have used the word among. Speakers of British English can use between. In America, we use the word toward, meaning I am going toward the sunset. In Britain, it's very common to say I am going towards, with an S on the end, towards the sunset. So towards is preferred in British English. Toward is preferred in American English. And there are many other distinctions because there's more than just British and American English. As you're conducting research at the university level, you will find that you are reading material or listening to videos or podcasts from sources that were not produced, or from sources that are not American, such as you may listen to BBC English news broadcasts from England. You may listen to Deutsche Welle, the German news and documentary services. Even though these sources are speaking or writing in English, it may not be the same English to which you were exposed living here in America. And to those of you who grew up outside of America, but now either did or at least now speak English, please, not all Americans think there's only one type of English. My experience is most of us Americans think that American English is English. However, I still meet sufficient number of people who recognize that, there's American English, there's British English, there's South African English, Australian English. So there are multiple versions of English around the world. When it comes to writing, know the format in which you should write. If you're asked to write a memo, write a memo. Don't write a term paper. If you're asked to write a term paper, don't write a memo. Make sure you focus on a specific topic. Make sure that the arguments you present in your written work are cohesive, that they fit together. And academic writing is generally more formal than colloquial language. Now, there are exceptions. You may take a class in poetry or literature, or you may take a theater class in which you're asked to write in a colloquial manner. But outside of those disciplines, most of your academic written work needs to use standard American English with what we generally call formal punctuation and avoiding the use of colloquialisms. For example, one that really bothers me is when students use the phrase a lot to mean many. And I tell my students, you can use the phrase a lot in two contexts in my class. If you wish to talk about the parcel of undeveloped land next to your house, that's a lot. Or if you're attending an auction and you're buying a group of items that are sold together, that's called a lot. Other than that, don't use a lot in my class. And of course, even though I tell students that students use it in their papers and then get frustrated when they don't earn 100% as a grade. Because if I tell you to not do something and you do it anyway, expect that I will reduce the grade you earn on that assignment. In regard to speaking at college, all the same requirements that exist for writing also exist for speaking. Plus, attend to your volume, your clarity, and your diction. I am hard of hearing in one ear, and when I'm lecturing, not during COVID, but prior to COVID, I wore a hearing aid. And I specifically got the hearing aid tuned to the pitch of the typical 18 to 21-year-old female voice. That's the pitch that's difficult for me to hear. I hear people with a deep voice. I hear people with a very high voice, but it's that right in the area of about 1,000 kilohertz that is typical for a post-adolescent female voice. It's difficult for me to hear. I would tell students, I wear a hearing aid, I'm hard of hearing, I even cut my ear when they're speaking, and I would get very frustrated when the students who I had a difficult time hearing didn't speak loudly. Speak up. Any of your professors who are obviously over the age of 50 are probably, even though they may not like to admit it, they are probably getting a little bit hard of hearing. Speak up. Be heard. Be understood. Be clear. Don't mumble. Now, all rules were off during COVID when we had returned to the classroom wearing masks. That was just, that was a nightmare. But we're coming out of the pandemic. We're entering the endemic stage of the coronavirus and, pandemic, and we are going to take off our masks. Maybe not in 2022, but we'll probably be taking off our masks in the classroom in the next coming years. I am very much looking forward to being able to see my students' faces again. But I want them to speak up. So I am encouraging you, speak up, be heard, be clear, and be understood. Maybe the greatest challenge for college students is conducting research. Research is about data acquisition so that the acquired data can be converted into information in the form of arguments that are presented either in a written paper or in an oral presentation. Use expert sources. I understand that you are fluid in the use of Google and other public search engines. Avoid using them during your academic research. Go to the library. Ask the librarian, do you offer tutorial services on how to use the library's resources? Learn to use your university's library efficiently. Take careful notes during your research. Whether you use a laptop or a tablet or paper and pencil, take good notes and make backups of your notes. If you take notes on your computer, back up the files to multiple other locations. If you take notes on your tablet, back up the files from the tablet to your computer and then put them in multiple other locations. If you take notes on paper, take a photograph of each page. Put the photograph from your phone onto your laptop and back it up into multiple other locations. Are you seeing a pattern here? You need backups of all your notes. You also need backups of all the files that you're producing that you'll give to your professors as an assignment response. For every resource that you consider when conducting research, make annotation notes and then back those up in multiple other locations. Annotate everything that you read, everything that you watch or listen to. It's vital to make notes, even if the notes you take are simply, this resource is not appropriate to my current research project, but it would be useful if I were to ever address the topic of XYZ. And if you're willing to carry your laptop with you whenever you go to the library or whenever you're logged in remotely to the library, use Zotero. I have a number of videos on the use of Zotero. This program will integrate very well with your library's resources, allowing you to collect the bibliographic data that you need to write your citations and references, and often the PDF copies of those papers that you acquired from the library. Zotero is just like a word processor. I prefer to use Microsoft Word. It's the combination of Zotero and Microsoft Word that allow me to write academic papers very efficiently. Now, I've made another number of comments about computers and tablets and phones. So, one characteristic I've observed of college students over the last, students for me have been using computers since the 90s, so it's the last 30 years or so. Students don't know how to use computers nearly as well as they think they do. Learn to really use the computer that you have. Understand all the characteristics, all the capabilities that are available in the software that's already on your computer. Consider using software that you haven't yet used. For example, if you haven't yet used Zotero, download it, learn to use it. Yes, it'll take you a good 12 hours to learn the ins and outs of Zotero, but I promise you, it will save you more than 12 hours the first semester that you start using it during your research. So it's investing the time now so that you are more efficient in the future. For most academic programs, it doesn't matter whether you use a Mac computer or a Microsoft Windows computer. For many years, I carried a Windows laptop around with me. 14 years ago, I switched to using Macs and never looked back. I personally find a Mac easier to use, but I suppose if I didn't have a Mac, I would use a Windows computer, and I could still get the same work done. You may also have a tablet, but don't use a tablet as a substitute for a full computer. The tablet is nice for handwritten notes. The tablet is great for keeping track of PDF files or audio or video files. It's wonderful for watching YouTube. But it's not great for typing on. Yes, I have a couple of Bluetooth keyboards that work with my iPads, and yes, I can type and take some notes on them, but it's not nearly as efficient as working on a primary computer. In my case, it's a MacBook Pro. Consider subscribing to a paid virtual private network service. There are many that are available. I subscribe to private internet access and NordVPN. I use them for different purposes, but it allows me to take my phone, my tablet, my iPad, or my MacBook, go into a coffee shop or go into the library on campus, or years ago, I used to eat lunch in the dining hall with students, and I could take my computer into those public areas, log into the Wi-Fi network, and I was assured that all the data that was traversing the campus Wi-Fi network was fully encrypted. Yes, once I left the endpoint of the VPN provider, went out on the public internet, my information was could be observed. But on campus, everything was encrypted in such a way that the wise guy computer science students couldn't try to hack my computer and observe what I was doing on the internet. It's nice to know that my information that's traversing my internet connection through the campus network is secure, and a VPN allowed me to do that. And I think I can't recall, but off the top of my head, I think NordVPN cost me, I'm not sure, but I'm going to guess $85 for 3 years worth of service. And private internet access costs me somewhere in the neighborhood of $30 or $40 a year. Or maybe it's less than that. It's not a significant amount in either regard. And in regarding backing up your data, I left out a comment about Ethernet and Wi-Fi. Learn how to connect your computer to a cabled Ethernet network. They're often going to be significantly faster performance than a Wi-Fi network. So use the Wi-Fi when you're out and about, you're in and out of the classroom, in and out of the library. But if you have an Ethernet jack in your dormitory room, you might find that you get better internet performance than using Wi-Fi. Even I've observed in some university libraries, Ethernet jacks built into the study tables. So carrying a 3-foot or a 6-foot Ethernet cable in your computer bag can boost your service, particularly when there are many other people using the same Wi-Fi network at the same time. And in regard to backing up your data, I advise following the 3-2-1 backup rule. Have at least 3 backup copies of your data. So if you're writing a paper for an assignment, don't count that. In addition to that one original document, 3 backups in at least 2 different locations, at least one of which is in the cloud, is off-site somewhere. So you might find that carrying a thumb drive with you allows you 1 backup copy. Putting the data on a Google Drive allows you a 2nd copy. And putting one on maybe the shared drive that the university granted you allows you a 3rd copy. So you now have, in addition to your first original copy of the document, you have 3 backups just in case you accidentally change or delete your first copy. You've got 3 backups from which to choose, and none of which have cost you any money yet. If you wish to subscribe to a larger Google Drive service, it might cost you a few dollars a month. Maybe you prefer to use Amazon's cloud storage service. But this is true of all your digital data, your documents, your PowerPoint files, your graphics, your audio files, your photographs. Everything needs to be backed up following at least the 3-2-1 rule, where you have at least 3 backed up copies in at least 2 different locations, and at least one of those locations has to be physically away from the location of your computer. So having 3 USB thumb drives that you carry around with you doesn't count, because you don't have one of those storage locations physically away from your computer. Honestly, maybe the least favored requirement at college is the requirement to do group work. Not every class will require it, but many will. And in general, students dislike being assigned group assignments. However, year after year after year, employers beg universities to teach students to work well together in teams. And it is not pleasant to work on a team with someone who doesn't pull their own weight. It does happen, but maybe just as often it happens that the people on the team are as good as I am, or maybe better. And then I have to recognize that I'm the one holding the team back. So you will be asked to work on teams. Just be prepared for it and go into it with a positive attitude. Seek to make it a good learning experience. One of the ways to make it a good experience is to remember, do your share of the work, offer constructive criticism to your about your teammates' work, help them do their portion of the assignment better, but realize that two very thoughtful, intelligent, well-meaning people can reach different conclusions and have different preferences. Be willing to compromise and seek to understand when you disagree with a teammate about how a portion of the project should be done. Seek to understand why you're disagreeing. Is it possible that you could do it your teammate's way and still reach a perfectly fine outcome? And ask your teammate to do the same thing. Sometimes there's a little bit of horse trading. I'll do the drafting if you do the proofreading. I will do this section of the argument and you do that section of the argument. Look for what each person's skills are and take advantage of one another's best attributes. And compromise. A team project is not about the way you want to do it. It's about the way the team can best do it together. And I'm going to leave you with a final comment. Professors are usually not teachers. A teacher is such as those that you had in high school. A teacher is someone who guides students to understanding fundamentals that are necessary to understanding some topic or discipline. They help students acquire life skills. Most teachers have been through some type of specialized training on the road to being an educator. Maybe they earned a bachelor's degree in education, or they earned a bachelor's degree in a science such as biology, and then a master's degree in education, or pedagogy, the process of teaching other people, usually teaching children, but it can be applied to young adults. Teaching is a helping profession, and most teachers enjoy their students having success. However, frequently, teachers are evaluated based on how well their students have done. And that includes how many of their students have been graduated from high school. Professors, on the other hand, have both, have classroom instruction, administrative, and research responsibilities. Often, they've earned a Doctor of Philosophy degree or another type of doctoral or professional degree, such as a Juris Doctor if they're a lawyer, or a medical doctor if they're a physician. Professors are almost always specialists in some narrow discipline. And I'm just going to tell you right now, every professor I know loves talking about their most recent research project. We have to do research. We have to contribute to the body of knowledge available in the world, and we love talking about it. However, most professors have not had formal academic training in pedagogy, in being a teacher. So while the teachers you had in high school have probably been trained to be teachers, professors, for the most part, have been trained to be experts. And it's a different world. It's not better or worse, but the two worlds are slightly different. And professors expect students to be responsible for their own success. We professors expect students to demonstrate independent scholarships, such as through independent study and research. And professors are typically, part of the evaluation of professors every year is based on how well they held students to the standards of the course. And often, the higher the standards, the higher the evaluation for the professor. So, whereas a teacher is often evaluated on how many students have completed a course of study, professors are evaluated on how well they held students to the standards, regardless of whether the students passed and or graduated. So, yeah, I'll just leave it at that and let you interpret that as you may. I am not a teacher first. I do teach, I do instruct students, I do guide them, I do coach them. But if by the end of the semester, a student fails, it doesn't negatively affect the performance evaluation that I received from the university, so long as I took appropriate action to create an environment in which the student could have independently succeeded. And so the advice my father gave me when I was a young man leaving high school and going off to college, he said, your professors will not hold your hand the same way high school teachers did. And he was right on the mark. My professors didn't. They were helpful. They were very knowledgeable of the subjects they taught. They wanted me to succeed. They challenged me and they enjoyed when I had success. But they didn't hold my hand along the way. They encouraged me to become independent of them and become an independent scholar. And that's why the subtitle of this presentation is the skills that you need to become independent in the academic arena. It's different than high school. Not bad, not better, not worse. It's just different. So I'm going to leave it there. And I wish you much success in your college academics. I hope you enjoy the path. I hope you enjoy the work. And I wish you absolutely the best of success. Bye for now.